Hello, wonderful English adventurers, and welcome to today's podcast episode. I'm thrilled to dive into a topic that's not only incredibly effective for language learning, but also a lot of fun: unlocking English fluency through storytelling. Have you ever found yourself memorizing long lists of vocabulary or complex grammar rules, only to feel like your English still sounds a bit unnatural or disconnected? You know the words, you understand the rules, but weaving them into engaging, flowing conversation feels like a hurdle. If this resonates with you, then you're in the right place. This is a common experience. Many learners focus heavily on the building blocks of language but miss out on one of the most powerful tools for bringing it all together: the art of narrative. But I want to assure you, mastering grammar and vocabulary is a fantastic achievement. It means you have the raw materials. The next step is to learn how to sculpt those materials into something meaningful and engaging. And storytelling is your chisel. The good news is, with a storytelling-focused approach, you can absolutely do this. In today's episode, we're going to explore why storytelling is such a potent tool for English learners. I'll share some insights into how it helps embed language naturally, and most importantly, I'll give you some simple practical tips to help you use storytelling to significantly improve your fluency and confidence. Whether you're learning English to connect with others, for academic reasons, or just for the joy of it, this podcast is for you. By the end of this episode, you'll feel inspired to use stories in your learning, and you'll have a clear plan to make storytelling a part of your daily English practice. So if you've ever thought, how can I make my English sound more natural and engaging? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about how to turn study into captivating communication and take your English skills to a whole new level. Personal story or real-life example. Let me share a story with you about a student I once knew. Let's call him Alex. Alex was incredibly diligent. He spent hours with textbooks, flashcards, and grammar exercises. His understanding of English rules was impeccable, and his vocabulary was extensive. He could ace any written test, but when it came to speaking, especially in more informal conversational settings, Alex struggled. His speech was often hesitant, and while grammatically correct, it sometimes felt a little robotic, like he was constructing sentences piece by piece from a manual. I remember we were in a small group discussion, and everyone was sharing weekend anecdotes. When it was Alex's turn, he wanted to describe a funny incident at a local market. He started, "On Saturday, I proceeded to the marketplace. An unforeseen event occurred when a vendor's avian pet, specifically a parrot, vocalized an amusing phrase. While accurate, it lacked the natural flow and engagement of a casual story. He could see others were slightly bemused, not by his English level, but by the formality. He later told me, 'I know all the words, I know the grammar, but I don't know how to tell a story like other people do. It doesn't sound natural when I try.'" This is a common hurdle. Learners can become so focused on accuracy that they lose the rhythm and flow of natural communication. For Alex, it wasn't a lack of knowledge, but a lack of practice in using language for narrative purposes. He was afraid his stories wouldn't be interesting, or that he'd make mistakes if he tried to be more casual or descriptive. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I'm not a natural storyteller even in my own language. Or perhaps, my vocabulary isn't good enough to tell interesting stories. Maybe you've tried to recount an event in English and felt it fell flat. These feelings are completely normal. You're not alone in this. In fact, many learners, even advanced ones, can explain complex concepts but struggle to simply tell a good, engaging story. For Alex, the shift began when we started focusing less on isolated grammar drills and more on narrative. We began with very simple storytelling, describing his day, retelling short fables, or even just describing pictures in a narrative way. One of the things that helped him was realizing that storytelling isn't about grand, epic tales. It's about connecting events, sharing experiences, and using descriptive language, even in small ways. He started listening to how native speakers told simple stories, the pauses, the intonation, the way they built a little suspense or humor. Slowly, Alex became more comfortable. He joined an improv group that used storytelling games. He started to collect interesting little anecdotes from his day and mentally practice how he might tell them in English. His confidence grew. It wasn't about being a perfect orator. It was about connecting with others through shared experiences. Today, Alex is a wonderfully engaging communicator in English. He can explain technical subjects clearly, but he can also charm a room with a well-told story. Looking back, he says the most important change was shifting his focus from constructing correct sentences to sharing an experience. The more he practiced the art of storytelling, the more natural, fluent, and confident his English became. I share Alex's story because it highlights that technical knowledge of English is just one part of the equation. Becoming a good communicator, a good storyteller in English, is achievable for everyone. It takes practice, a willingness to be a little playful with language, and a focus on connection over perfection. The more you embrace storytelling, the more you'll find your English flowing with ease and personality. Why is storytelling so effective for language learning? If you're someone who wants to move beyond just knowing English to truly using it in a dynamic and engaging way, you might be wondering why storytelling is such a powerful tool. It's not just about entertainment. It's a fundamental way humans communicate and learn. When we apply this to language acquisition, the benefits are immense. Let's explore some of the main reasons why storytelling is a game changer for English learners. Contextual learning. One of the biggest advantages of storytelling is that it provides rich context. Instead of learning vocabulary words or grammar rules in isolation, like apple or past perfect tense, stories show you how these elements are used naturally within a narrative. You see words in action, connected to emotions, characters, and events. This makes them much easier to understand, remember, and then use correctly yourself. For example, learning the phrasal verb to give up from a list is less impactful than hearing a story about a character who faced challenges but refused to give up. Enhanced memory and retention. Our brains are wired for stories. Information presented in a narrative format is far more memorable than dry facts or lists. The emotional engagement, the plot, the characters, all these elements create stronger neural pathways. When you learn new words or phrases through a story, you're more likely to recall them because they're anchored to a memorable experience, even if it's a fictional one. Natural acquisition of grammar and syntax. Stories inherently demonstrate correct grammar and sentence structure, syntax, in a natural, flowing way. You're not dissecting rules. You're absorbing patterns. By repeatedly reading or listening to well-told stories, you start to internalize how sentences are built, how tenses are used to show time, and how different clauses connect. This happens, almost subconsciously, making your own sentence construction more intuitive. Vocabulary expansion in a meaningful way. Stories expose you to a wide range of vocabulary, including idioms, phrasal verbs, and descriptive adjectives, all used appropriately within a context. You might encounter words you wouldn't find in a standard textbook. Because you understand the overall story, you can often infer the meaning of new words, and seeing them used effectively makes you more likely to adopt them into your own active vocabulary. Development of fluency and cohesion. Telling a story requires you to link ideas, use transition words like then, however, suddenly, and maintain a flow. Practicing storytelling even by retelling simple stories, helps you develop this crucial skill of cohesive discourse. It trains you to think in longer stretches of language, improving your overall fluency and making your speech sound more natural and less fragmented. Cultural understanding. Stories are often windows into culture. They can reveal values, beliefs, humor, and social norms of English-speaking cultures. Understanding these cultural nuances can significantly improve your communication effectiveness and help you connect more deeply with native speakers. Folk tales, anecdotes, and even modern narratives carry cultural DNA. Increased motivation and engagement. Let's be honest, storytelling is more fun than rote memorization. Engaging with interesting characters and plots makes the learning process more enjoyable. When you're enjoying what you're doing, you're more likely to stick with it and spend more time immersed in the language. This intrinsic motivation is a powerful driver for language acquisition. As you can see, storytelling isn't just a pastime. It's a multifaceted learning strategy. It helps you learn vocabulary and grammar in context, improves memory, teaches natural sentence flow, enhances cultural understanding, and keeps you motivated. By incorporating stories into your English learning routine, you're not just studying a language, you're experiencing it. In the next section, we'll talk about why actively engaging with storytelling, not just passively consuming it, is so vital for your progress. The importance of active storytelling practice. Now that we've explored why storytelling is such a fantastic tool for learning English, let's focus on a crucial aspect: active storytelling practice. It's one thing to read or listen to stories, and that's a great start. But to truly unlock fluency and confidence, you need to become an active participant in the storytelling process. But why is active practice so crucial? Why is it the most powerful way to harness the benefits of narrative for your speaking skills? Connecting knowledge to action. When you're learning English, you accumulate a lot of passive knowledge. Vocabulary, you recognize. Grammar rules, you understand. Active storytelling practice, like retelling a story in your own words or creating a short narrative, forces you to retrieve that passive knowledge and use it productively. It's the bridge between knowing about the language and actually using the language to communicate. For example, you might understand how to use different past tenses, but actively telling a story about your weekend forces you to choose and apply those tenses correctly in real time. Building productive skills. Listening and reading are receptive skills. Speaking and writing are productive skills. Storytelling is an excellent way to develop these productive skills. When you tell a story, you're not just recalling words, you're organizing thoughts, structuring sentences, choosing appropriate vocabulary, using correct intonation and pacing, and conveying emotion. This active creation process is vital for developing true communicative competence. Improving fluency and coherence. Fluency isn't just about speaking quickly, it's about speaking smoothly and logically. Active storytelling practice trains you to connect ideas coherently. You learn to use discourse markers, like first, then, however, as a result, to guide your listener. The more you practice telling stories, the better you'll become at maintaining a flow, reducing hesitations, and making your speech more natural and easier to follow. Developing your voice in English. When you actively tell stories, you begin to develop your own personal style or voice in English. You experiment with different ways of expressing ideas, adding personality, humor, or emphasis. This is something that passive consumption alone can't teach you. It's through active creation that you make the language your own. Internalizing language patterns. Each time you construct a narrative, you are reinforcing natural English sentence patterns and grammatical structures. The act of forming sentences, choosing tenses, and linking clauses helps to internalize these patterns so they become more automatic. This is much more effective than just memorizing rules because you are learning by doing. Boosting confidence in self-expression. Successfully telling a story, even a simple one, can be a huge confidence booster. It proves to yourself that you can express yourself in English, that you can hold someone's attention, and that you can communicate more than just basic facts. This confidence then spills over into other speaking situations. Each successful storytelling attempt makes the next one feel less daunting, identifying gaps in your knowledge. When you try to tell a story, you'll quickly discover where your gaps are. Maybe you're missing a key piece of vocabulary, or you're unsure about a particular tense. This is incredibly valuable. Active practice highlights exactly what you need to work on, making your study time more focused and efficient. You might realize you need more words to describe emotions, or more ways to sequence events. In summary, active storytelling practice is crucial because it transforms passive knowledge into active skill. It builds your ability to produce coherent, fluent, and expressive English. It helps you internalize language patterns, find your voice, and boost your confidence. If you want to become a truly effective communicator in English, you have to move beyond just consuming stories and start creating and sharing them. Don't worry if it feels challenging at first. Like any skill, it gets easier and more natural with practice. In the next section, we'll discuss practical strategies you can use to make active storytelling a regular part of your routine. Overcoming the fear of creating stories. One of the biggest hurdles many English learners face when it comes to storytelling isn't a lack of vocabulary or grammar, but the fear of creating stories. It's natural to feel a bit intimidated, especially if you don't consider yourself a creative person, or if you're worried about making mistakes. However, this fear shouldn't stop you from harnessing the power of narrative. The truth is, everyone can tell stories, and overcoming this initial apprehension is key to unlocking significant progress. Understand that story doesn't mean epic novel. First, let's redefine what we mean by story in this context. You don't need to be Shakespeare or craft a complex, multi-layered plot. A story can be as simple as recounting what you did over the weekend, describing a funny thing that happened on your way to work, explaining how you learned a new skill, or even just narrating the sequence of events in a picture. Start small. The goal is communication and practice, not winning a literary prize. Shift focus from perfection to communication. Many learners are afraid to tell stories because they worry about making grammatical mistakes or not using the perfect word. Remember, the primary goal of storytelling and language learning is to practice communication and build fluency. Small mistakes are part of the process. Native speakers make mistakes too. Focus on getting your message across, on connecting with your listener, even if your listener is just yourself in the beginning, rather than on flawless execution. I'm not creative enough. The creativity. Myth: this is a common concern, but storytelling for language practice isn't about inventing fantastical worlds from scratch. Though you can if you want, you are surrounded by stories every day, your own experiences, things you observe, news items, anecdotes from friends. Your daily life is a source of countless simple narratives. Creativity here is more about how you present information and link ideas, not necessarily about pure invention. Start with retelling. If creating original stories feels too daunting, begin by retelling stories you've read or heard. This could be a simple children's story, a fable, a news article, or even the plot of a movie or TV show episode. Retelling allows you to practice narrative structure, vocabulary, and flow without the pressure of inventing the content. You can gradually start adding your own embellishments or changing details as you get more comfortable. Use prompts and frameworks. Sometimes a blank page or a silent room is the scariest part. Use prompts to get you started. Picture prompts. Describe what's happening in a picture, what happened before, and what might happen next. What if? Scenarios. What if you woke up with a superpower? What if you met your favorite celebrity? Sentence starters. One day, I decided to... The strangest thing happened to me when... I'll never forget the time. Story frameworks. A simple framework like situation, problem, solution, result, or beginning, middle, end can provide structure. Practice in low-pressure environments. Your first storytelling attempts don't need an audience. Talk to yourself. Narrate your actions as you do them. I'm making a cup of tea. First, I boil the water. Record yourself. Tell a short story and record it. Listen back, not to judge, but to notice areas for improvement and to acknowledge what you did well. Write it down. First, if speaking spontaneously is too hard, write the story down first, then practice telling it aloud. Embrace simplicity. Your stories don't need complex vocabulary or convoluted sentences. Simple, clear language is often the most effective. Focus on using the vocabulary and grammar you already know well. As your confidence grows, you can start incorporating more advanced elements. Remember, everyone is a storyteller. Humans are natural storytellers. We do it all the time without even thinking about it when we chat with friends or family. You already have this innate ability in your native language. The task is to transfer and develop this skill in English. It's not about acquiring a new, alien talent, but about adapting an existing one. Overcoming the fear of creating stories is a journey. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories, like telling a short, coherent story about your day. By understanding that story has a broad definition, focusing on communication over perfection, and starting with simple, low-pressure exercises, you can conquer this fear and make storytelling a joyful and effective part of your English learning. Practical tips to use storytelling for English improvement. Improving your English through storytelling isn't just a theory. It's something you can actively do with concrete strategies. If you're ready to move beyond just understanding stories, to using them to boost your fluency, here are practical tips you can incorporate into your learning routine. Read widely and actively. Immerse yourself in stories. Read children's books, great for simpler language and clear narratives, short stories, graded readers, articles, or even novels if you're up for it. But don't just passively read. Pay attention to how the story is structured. The beginning, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Vocabulary. Note down new words and phrases, especially descriptive ones or those that convey emotion. Sentence structure. Observe how different types of sentences are used. Dialogue. How do characters speak? What kind of language do they use? Listen to. Stories intently. Audio is a fantastic resource. Listen to podcasts that tell stories, like This American Life for advanced learners, or story-based podcasts for English learners, audiobooks, or even YouTube channels where people share personal anecdotes. Pay attention to pronunciation and intonation. How do speakers use their voice to convey meaning and emotion? Pacing and pauses. Natural speech isn't monotonous. Linking words and phrases. How do they connect ideas smoothly? Retell stories you've read or heard. This is a cornerstone of active practice. After reading or listening to a story, summarize it. First, try to summarize the main points in a few sentences. Retell it in your own words. Try to recount the story as if you were telling it to a friend. Don't worry about getting every detail perfect or using the exact same words. The goal is to practice constructing the narrative yourself. You can do this out loud to yourself, to a language partner, or even write it down. Create your own simple stories daily. Make storytelling a daily habit, even if it's just for a few minutes. Narrate your day. At the end of the day, recount the key events. First, I woke up and had breakfast. Then, I went to work. During my lunch break, an interesting thing happened. Story of my day. Journal, write a short paragraph or two. Use picture prompts. Find an interesting picture online or in a magazine and tell a story about it. What's happening? What happened before? What will happen next? One word or one sentence. Prompts. Start with a single word, e.g., key, forest, surprise, or sentence. The old box was finally open, and build a short story around it. Focus on show don't tell. Instead of saying, she was sad, try to show her sadness through actions or descriptions. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she slowly turned away, her shoulders slumping. This uses more descriptive language and makes your stories more engaging. It's a great way to practice using adjectives, adverbs, and vivid verbs. Use story-based language learning apps and materials. Many resources are designed around storytelling. Look for apps, websites, or textbooks that use narratives to teach vocabulary and grammar. Some apps even allow you to create simple stories or participate in interactive narratives. Find a storytelling partner or group. Practice with others. Language exchange partner. Take turns telling each other stories, personal anecdotes, summaries of things you've read, or made-up tales. Join a conversation club or storytelling group. Some groups specifically focus on narrative practice. This provides a supportive environment and an audience. Even an informal agreement with a friend to share a story of the week can be beneficial. Record yourself. Telling stories. This can be incredibly insightful. Record yourself retelling a story or sharing an anecdote. When you listen back, you can identify areas for improvement in pronunciation, fluency, grammar, or vocabulary choice. It might feel awkward at first, but it's a powerful tool for self-correction. Learn common storytelling phrases and connectors. Familiarize yourself with phrases that help structure narratives. Once upon a time, it all started when, suddenly, in the end, meanwhile, as a result, therefore. Using these will make your stories flow more smoothly. Don't be afraid to be playful and exaggerate. Storytelling for language practice doesn't always have to be serious or factual. Allow yourself to be a bit playful, to exaggerate for humorous effect, or to invent silly scenarios. This can make the practice more enjoyable and less intimidating. Improving your English through storytelling is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and most importantly, have fun with it. The more you weave narratives into your learning, the more natural, confident, and fluent your English will become. The connection between storytelling and fluency. Listening and speaking are fundamental skills, but when we talk about fluency, storytelling offers a unique pathway to achieving it. Fluency is more than just speaking quickly. It's about speaking smoothly, coherently, and with a natural rhythm, allowing your ideas to flow effortlessly. Storytelling is intrinsically linked to developing this kind of articulate fluency. Let's explore how. The importance of narrative structure for fluency. When we tell a story, we are inherently working with a structure, a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a sequence of events, often with cause and effect, problems and resolutions. Logical flow. Practicing storytelling trains your brain to organize thoughts logically and present them in a coherent sequence. This ability to structure your thoughts quickly is a cornerstone of fluent speech. Instead of fumbling for what to say next, you develop an intuitive sense of narrative progression, chunking language. Stories naturally encourage chunking, using common phrases, collocations, and sentence patterns as single units. Fluent. Speakers don't construct every sentence word by word. They draw upon a vast mental library of these chunks. By engaging with and creating stories, you absorb and practice these natural language chunks, which speeds up your production and makes your speech sound more native-like. The feedback loop between comprehending and producing stories. The more stories you listen to and read, the more you internalize the cadences, vocabulary, and grammatical patterns of narrative English. Internalizing rhythms. You start to develop an ear for how stories unfold, the intonation patterns used to build, suspense or express emotion, and the pacing. This deep listening informs your own speaking. Building a repertoire. When you then try to tell your own stories, you're drawing upon this internalized knowledge. You're not just retrieving isolated words, you're accessing patterns and structures you've encountered. Each time you successfully tell a story, you reinforce these patterns, making them more readily available for future use. This creates a positive feedback loop. Better comprehension leads to better production, which in turn enhances comprehension. How storytelling overcomes fluency barriers. Many barriers to fluency, like hesitation or an over-reliance on translating from a native language, can be addressed through storytelling. Reducing cognitive load. When you're in a story, especially one you know well or are passionate about, your focus shifts from a painstaking word-by-word construction of sentences to the overall message and the desire to engage your listener. This can reduce the cognitive load associated with speaking a foreign language, allowing for more natural flow. Encouraging thinking in English. To tell a story effectively in English, you increasingly need to think in English. Constantly translating in your head is too slow for narrative. Storytelling practice nudges you towards direct thought in English, which is crucial for fluency. Practicing extended discourse. Fluency isn't just about short answers. It's about being able to speak at length. Storytelling provides a natural context for practicing this extended discourse. You learn to sustain a conversation, link ideas across multiple sentences, and keep your listener engaged over a longer period. Developing expressiveness. A key component of fluency. True fluency also involves expressiveness, using your voice, tone, and pacing to convey meaning and emotion effectively. Emotional connection. Stories are often emotional. Practicing telling stories allows you to experiment with conveying different emotions in English: excitement, sadness, humor, surprise. This makes your speech more engaging and less monotonous. using paralinguistic cues. Through storytelling, you practice using paralinguistic cues like pauses for effect, changes in volume, and varied intonation, all of which contribute to a more fluent and natural-sounding delivery. In essence, the connection between storytelling and fluency lies in its holistic approach. Storytelling doesn't just focus on individual words or grammar rules. It integrates them into a meaningful, structured, and expressive whole. By regularly engaging in both consuming and creating stories, you are training your brain to think, structure, and speak in English more naturally, smoothly, and coherently. It moves you from being a student of the language to becoming a user in the language. Conclusion. In conclusion, the journey to English fluency can be wonderfully enriched and accelerated by embracing the power of storytelling. Far from being just a source of entertainment, storytelling is a fundamental human way of connecting, sharing, and learning, making it an incredibly potent tool for language acquisition. By actively engaging with narratives, listening to them, reading them, and most importantly, creating and retelling them yourself, you are doing so much more than just practicing vocabulary and grammar. You're learning to weave words into meaningful contexts, enhancing your memory and understanding. You're internalizing the natural rhythm, intonation, and structure of spoken English. You're building the confidence to express your thoughts and experiences coherently and engagingly. Storytelling helps you to think in English, to organize your ideas logically, and to connect with others on a more personal level. It transforms language learning from a mechanical exercise into a creative and communicative art. Don't be discouraged if creating stories in English feels challenging at first. Remember, Alex, and remember that every storyteller starts somewhere. Start simple, focus on communication over perfection, and be patient with your progress. Use the practical tips we discussed today. Read and listen actively. Retell stories. Narrate your daily experiences, and don't be afraid to be playful. The more you immerse yourself in the world of stories, the more your fluency, confidence, and overall command of English will grow. You'll find yourself not just speaking English, but truly communicating in it with personality and flair. So go forth, explore the tales around you, and start crafting your own. You've got this. Keep practicing, keep sharing, and soon you'll find yourself speaking more effortlessly and connecting more deeply through the universal language of stories.